Okay, this is where we ended up last time. What we were talking about is the general concept, again, as a review, that the out-of-state vendor, that's what this is referring to, out-of-state vendor, if they're found to have nexus for sales tax purposes, they have to collect. If they are found not to have nexus, then they don't collect, and the use tax has to be paid by the customer. And of course, we had a class where we talked about the use tax to be paid by customers in this situation where there's no nexus by the vendor, so it all falls on the consumer to pay it. And we talked about the sort of the joking fact that nobody pays it. No one does it. So what under the new theory of some states, what they're doing is they're doing the following. It's very interesting, actually, and that is they're doing this. They are requiring the customers, actually not the customers, I'm sorry. What they're doing is they're saying to the out-of-state vendor, the seller, they're saying to them, here's what we want you to do. We know that you're claiming no nexus. And we might agree with you that you're correct. You don't have nexus in our fair state of, call this Florida. So we agree with you. You don't have any nexus here. But this is what we want you to do. And Florida didn't do this, although they may have it now. I think it was either Oregon or Utah that started at first. I don't remember exactly, but one of the states started, and now it's caught on where many states are doing it. What they're saying is, okay, you seller, here's what we need you to do. Florida is saying it to the seller. We want you to put together a report that will say, who did you sell to in our state? And we want you to give that report to us. Now, the who will usually be people who have bought more than a certain dollar amount. So it won't be you or me. It might be more than 100,000 or more than 50,000 or something like that, as an example. But what happens in Florida now is they now know who the big purchasers are from this out-of-state vendor. And you know what the next step's going to be. If they know who it is here who made these big purchases, you can imagine the Florida auditing people who might look like this. They got 5 or 6 legs, or yeah, they look ugly. That's what the auditors look like, and you know that they're going to start auditing who's been reported by this out-of-state vendor, and they're going to go after the use tax. That's the next step. So in addition to expanding nexus, the other way to do it that the states are using now is getting information, and this has been found to be constitutional, and so many states have jumped on this bandwagon in order to start enforcing collection of sales and or use tax. And of course, the next thing that's going on right now, which is being decided by the courts, is what about strictly internet sales of tangible property or services, and what about digital products and software as a service? What about storage in a cloud? When is that taxable for sales or use tax? And it's all over the place. Different states have different rules, and so I'm not even going to try to explain who's got what. Now, the last thing I want to cover as a review is that sometimes there's a legitimate exemption from collecting sales tax even within a state if you're incorporated there and actually have nexus there, or if you're not incorporated there but you have nexus, you may have legitimate exemptions, and that's what I want to make sure we still know. Certainly an exemption is when you're selling and you're not selling to the ultimate consumer. So that would qualify for an exemption under the theory of it's not the ultimate sale. So this is a seller sale for resale. So the one who's buying product or services for resale, they're not required to pay sales tax at that point to the seller to them, and you get a seller's exemption, a resale exemption. That's what you get. So let me get that straight. This is what would be known as a resale exemption, and you need to prove it to these guys buying it here would need to prove it to these guys by giving them a certificate that they are only buying for resale. And that way, the seller here would have the ability to show the auditors that they weren't required to pick up sales tax at that sale because it was being sold to someone who's reselling it. So that's a legitimate exemption. Others are tax-exempt services or tax-exempt goods. We talked about food as an area where and medical services, drugs. Sometimes you're selling to a nonprofit. That could be an exempt customer. Medical equipment. Manufacturing, we didn't talk about too much, but that's another area. Since the manufacturing equipment is going to be making items subject to sales tax, it's often exempt from taxation itself. And then this one's still up in the air as to where it's going to end up. Some software delivered electronically is subject to sales tax in some states and sometimes not. It's still a work in process. And that takes us to the end of this. What I'd like you to do, if you've gotten this far, and I hope you did, is feel free to send me any questions you've had on the review or anything about the course that you have a question on, and I can either answer that specifically directly to you or make another video if I've missed something that you would like to see me go into more detail for a review.